Hello, everyone. And if you are tired of people talking about what an amazing and profound experiencing the solar eclipse in totality was, this might not be the video for you. I hope you still hang around and check it out because I'm going to share my experience. And this just so directly is connected to why I'm interested in the paranormal. Now, obviously, no, the eclipse is not paranormal. We know this now, but it is that feeling of wonder that connects me to seeing things that can't be explained, as well as something that is a very rare thing. And we'll circle back to that a bit later on. But just to dive in, as we will go to comments and we'll have fun with AI at the end as always. But I'm just gonna go straight into the experience of experiencing totality. I've never seen a full solar eclipse in my life before. I have had opportunities and I thought, well, what's the big deal? We all had opportunities just a few years back, pre-pandemic. We could have gone down the last time the sun swept across the nation. I didn't see the excitement of it. I just didn't think that seeing an eclipse would have such a profound impact and be such a wild experience, but it really was. We were down near Cincinnati, Ohio for the weekend, and then for the eclipse itself, we came over the border into far eastern Indiana, and there was a wonderful person who opened the farm field up for all of these people to come in, hang out, observe the eclipse, and it really was just a wonderful environment to be hanging out outside on this beautiful day. We were very lucky with the weather. You can never plan for that. We now can predict eclipses for hundreds of years into the future, but you just never know what weather is going to have in store for you until the day of. And it was supposed to be cloudy this day. And thank goodness for us. And for most of the country, it cleared up. Just getting the first look of the shadow of the moon going over the sun through the eclipse glasses, it was just freaking cool. I don't know how else to say it. It was really neat to see. I don't know if I've ever even worn eclipse glasses before. So it was an entirely new experience for me. And I certainly have always had a reverence and an appreciation for seeing things in the sky. No, I've never seen a UFO. But just, using the Google night sky on your phone to look at the constellations or see satellites going across the sky, if you're in a place that's dark enough to see that, which, fortunately for me, I've had a lot of time out in Arizona or up in northern Wisconsin where it's very, very dark. I've been able to get outside of Chicago or LA and to some very dark skies and see nothing out of the ordinary, but just to gaze into space and its glory as it is on every single night. I have to give a shout out and thanks to Dustin from Smarter Every Day. It is a great science YouTube channel. And I was already interested in seeing the eclipse this time around, but he posted a video a few months ago that really got me hyped up and excited, and to talk about all the different things to pay attention to when the eclipse is actually happening and the moments that lead up to the eclipse. And I'll be honest with you, most of those things, or at least many of those things, didn't happen. Like we didn't observe crickets coming alive, all insects coming out. I didn't really notice anything particularly different about animals in the area, birds flying through the sky. But it was still good to be aware of these things just in case they were happening. For the most part, you're watching the eclipse happen through the solar glasses, and not much is happening around you. Not until you get more than 90% of the sun covered. And even at that point, it's still very bright out. But I think that's when I first began to feel that maybe it's getting a little bit colder. By then, you're really having fun with the shadows, seeing all of those crescent shapes through the pinholes or the hole punched papers we had, or even just making your hand into a little hole and being able to project the crescent shape onto whatever surface you want at that point. That was fun, seeing the fuzzy versus sharp angles of shadows depending on which side the shadow of the moon was casting down. And once you hit close to 95% of the blockage, you do see that the light is changing around you. Now, we experience every single day a sunset. So you would assume, or I would assume, that the sun barely being in the sky is going to look like that. But there was just something off about it, something kind of uncanny, something eerie. Colors definitely got super muted, and I really can't fully explain it. It is getting dark. It's like minute to minute, you see a difference now, I feel. Yeah. The color of everything around you and the quality of light was just different. It was strange. It was weird. It was eerie. And And I think it was around then when I started to really think about how ancient cultures thought the world was ending, or thought that the moon was eating the sun, something apocalyptic. That was the first time where I felt like, yeah, I understand why they would think this. This is weird. This is not normal. This is very unusual. And especially back at that time period where news isn't spreading, where people aren't traveling around as frequently, this is something that would be a completely, at most, once in a lifetime experience in those ancient eras. And of course, their entire lives depended on the sun. So for it to be going away pretty quickly had to have been extraordinarily alarming. And we are going to talk about some of those ancient beliefs later on in this video. So the first bit of magic is just how unlikely this is to ever happen. That things have to be so perfectly in line, because we have the moon, which I'm going to represent with a family heirloom. This is I think it's a Little League trophy from 1945. And we have the sun, which has no sentimental value, a nice disco ball. So these two objects, the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, but the moon is 400 times closer to Earth than the sun. What are the absolute odds of that exact orientation lining up to be true? The odds of that are just so minuscule, but fortunately for us, it works out that way, so that we can see these things in the sky as roughly the same size, and this moon can completely cover the sun. It's just amazing to me that that works out the way it works out. So, once we hit that point of totality, where the last little sliver of the sun has gone away, and then you're able to take your glasses off and look directly at it, I didn't really know what to expect. And I guess I'm glad I didn't look into it too much, because my mind was just beyond blown. It was, you've all seen the photos or the video of this thing in the sky with this corona around it, just this light shooting out, emanating out from it. Oh man, I feel like it's happening right now.
Oh my gosh.
There's just a tiny bit. Yeah, exactly.
About 10 more seconds.
Oh man.
10 seconds.
Oh, look how close it is. Look how dark it is outside. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, it's a point. Wow. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Oh wow.
That is just amazing.
Well, you can't see it.
You can see us.
Look right there.
You can see some stars out now.
Look at that worked. The picture. Oh my god. Oh yeah. Oh,
Wow.
what a field.
Go. I'm still having a really hard time describing what it felt like to see that. It was overwhelming. It was cool. Just to be blunt, it was cool. And it was surreal. It was alien. It made the world feel like an alien landscape. To have this thing hovering over you that is unlike anything you've ever seen before. And of course, to be able to look at it with your eyes, that was just a surreal thing too. Your entire life, you're told not to look at the sun. You don't really want to look at the sun anyway. But you can just stare at it all you want. Of course, it changes everything around you. It's never pitch black. You constantly have this 360-degree sunset that's on the horizon, far away. But that is where the edge of the shadow is, basically. Where we were, we had about 3.5 minutes of this experience. So you actually did have a little moment to let it sink in and to walk around and to look around, really take it in as much as humanly possible. And without a doubt, it got chilly, but your adrenaline is going so much, you don't really notice the cold. I feel we did get that eclipse breeze that people talk about, that when it's still in the horizon, the air is getting colder there, and it's just kind of like coming downhill more or less towards where you are. The breeze did pick up in advance. It got chilly, it got calm, and it just stayed eerie. And again, my mind just couldn't help but think about what people in ancient times were thinking about, how much they were probably full of terror, not expecting this, and then suddenly this is happening. Pretty quickly, we saw that there was this little dot towards the bottom of it, from our perspective, the bottom of it, and weren't sure what that was at first, but then it turns out it was a valley on the surface of the moon, and just a little bit extra light was shining through that valley. So that even with your bare eyes, without a telescope, without any kind of magnification, you could see a valley surface on the moon as represented by the sun shining through it. Just an unusual, unique experience. And then, of course, our fear was, how much time do we really have? Because we don't want to be looking at it when the sun pokes back out, and will it injure us? Will we end up looking at it too much longer than we should? The amazing thing is that when that first little speck of sun comes out, and I was looking at that time, you look away immediately. It is so bright, even that's the tiniest little sliver. When that pops out, there is just no mistaking. You can't accidentally look at it too long. And that was something that was impressive too. When the sun was 92-ish% blocked, it didn't look different at all. That was pretty amazing how bright the sun really is. That it could be almost entirely blocked, and you wouldn't notice it when you look around. Oh yeah. Whoa. Oh man, already you see it getting lighter. That ball of energy up there is ferocious. And of course, this is one sun out of billions and billions and billions and trillions in the universe. Really, you do start to get that perspective the more you think about it. And I think that's a big thing that we don't often think about scale, about how vast our universe is. We oftentimes don't look outside of our own country or our own communities, but it's really good to have that perspective. I feel like my mind was opened a lot when I did a lot of European travel for the first time in my life last year. And while I've always appreciated and been in awe of the universe, the known universe, this was, again, a time to focus on it and reflect on it more so than we're able to do in our day-to-day life. Something I mentioned to my wife afterwards is that had I alone, or just she and I, observed this together, it would have been amazing. But it was so much more profound that we were with not just more family, more loved ones, which was wonderful to share that with 3 generations, but to also share it with a whole bunch of strangers that were also in that farm field with us. Max and I, my co-host from the Fantastic Story Society, we talk a lot about the movie-going experience, how wonderful it is, especially with certain genres, to be able to get scared together or to laugh together. The communal experience of things in a movie theater is really kind of a magical moment. But even more so, obviously, here, I don't know, just because we're all sharing in that moment, and you can't observe that moment and not feel some level of exhilaration, of excitement, of wonder. And people talk about seeing it and getting choked up or teary-eyed. And I've heard scientists or more science-minded people talk about that in relation to just feeling their insignificance, their humility in the world, seeing these vast bodies in front of them, and getting a different perspective. And I didn't have that connection because the size and distance of the moon and the sun, as huge as they are, they're too big for me to wrap my mind around. So I just know that there's big stuff out there, and it's too hard to really, to me, fully appreciate because it's too big. However, it was still overwhelming. And a few minutes after the totality ended, while the eclipse was still definitely going on, while it was still looking eerie out, my wife asked me, it's like, how was it? And of course, that's as everything was kind of crashing in on me, and it was all hitting me after the exhilaration of the totality. How overwhelming it was starting to collapse on me, and I couldn't speak.
What'd you think? Pretty cool.
I literally just had to look away. I could not make a sound. I couldn't get words to come out of my mouth because there was just so much of an overstimulus, I guess, and just what you're thinking about in that moment. So to answer that question of how was it, because I couldn't speak then, I'll answer now. It was amazing. It was cool. It was surreal. It was overwhelming. And I felt an instant connection with all of humanity throughout all times and across all cultures. That's about what it's like. I'm not the science guy, even though I do appreciate science. I'm the history guy. So for me, from the historical perspective, is what my heart connected to a lot and what I felt empathy towards a lot. Like when I lived in Hawaii, I worked just outside of Waikiki. Just like any major city, there's traffic. Sometimes I would wait out traffic by going to Waikiki Beach and going and boogie boarding in the surf out there. And while on the island of Oahu, Waikiki is not by any stretch of the imagination the coolest beach. That I've got a top 10 list or a top 15 or 20 list, and Waikiki's not on it. But I couldn't be out there on my board without thinking about the fact that this same bay is where royalty surfed once upon a time, where surfing itself was born. And yes, by kings and queens and princes and dukes, definitely dukes, if you know surfing and Hawaii history. The dukes loved to surf. And so that's profound. Being able to say that in the same bay is where ancient Hawaiian royalty once upon a time grabbed a piece of wood and went out to play in the waves. That's cool. I connect to that. And then just as profound as the sun going away was, it was amazing how quickly it was back. It was neat because you could see when the eclipse was coming, there was night flying towards you so quickly. You could see the darkness. And then when it was over and the sun was coming up or re-emerging for us, you could look, there's daylight over there. It's daytime over there and it's still nighttime over there. We can still see the shadow of the eclipse in the distance. And it kind of felt like storm clouds a little bit, the way that looks, but they weren't. It was nighttime there and it was daytime, full daytime there. And we were in this hazy in-between place with again, that strange lighting effect. And of course, after the daylight came, even though the eclipse wasn't fully over, you begin to pack up to make that long pilgrimage home. For us, it should have been 6 or 7 hours, and it was maybe an hour and a half longer. But it was also amazing because we were leaving that farm behind and saying goodbye to family that we all have this shared experience in, and we're getting on the road, and there was traffic all the way home. And when you stop for gas, people are talking to you, asking, "Hey, where did you watch the eclipse?" They just know that there's no reason you would be out right now other than that. It was, again, a shared thing that you could stop anywhere and people are sharing their eclipse stories and what they saw, what they felt, where they watched it, what the setting was like. These aren't people that you know. They aren't people that you shared that moment with, but you did share that moment because we were all sharing that moment. And even at the very end, the last stretch of road heading up across Illinois into Wisconsin, traffic was flowing, but it was full. Just both lanes, cars everywhere. We were still cruising at 60 or so miles an hour, but it was packed roads. And that's incredible. That's awesome to me. I thought getting through Chicago would be tough, which it was. But then once you get past that, that's where all the people live. Now we're getting to more desolate areas, but so many people traveled from so far to see this special, unique moment. And that's something that is going to bond so many of us that we'll be able to talk about the eclipse experience for ourselves. And it certainly didn't matter which candidate you backed. It didn't matter what sports teams you're a fan of, anything like that. It was a human moment where you couldn't help but feel excited about what you were seeing, what you were going through. And that's something that hit, I think, everybody that saw it in their hearts, in their minds. And that's something that we will always be able to connect on, no matter what else is going to happen. As long as we can keep returning back to those moments, that will be a very positive thing. This is a bit of a segue, I suppose, because one of the ancient beliefs that comes out of Africa is that there is so much darkness and fighting and turmoil on Earth that it has overflowed Earth and is now starting to block out the sun. I think that's good to have that perspective too. Again, as I talk about looking outside of ourselves, outside of our countries and our moments in time where right now, in so many ways, doesn't it feel like the worst time ever? We have wars, we have all of this political turmoil. This is the worst time ever, right? Well, no, people in ancient Africa believed that they were in the worst of times and that their darkness was actually blocking out the sun. Sadly, this is part of the human condition. So being mindful of it will hopefully allow us to make changes. And it doesn't have to be becoming a political leader. It doesn't have to be leading a charity. It just has to do with being conscious within ourselves to have that perspective and hopefully bring lightness to whatever's around you, or to see that, hey, this isn't healthy for me to be watching 24-hour news all the time. Let's turn the damn channel, put on Nat Geo, go for a walk, connect with somebody, call up an old friend, make a new friend, get away from the darkness machines that is 24-hour news. Jumping into Britannica's look at 6 different ways cultures have explained eclipses. Ancient China has some of the oldest records ever, going back more than 4,000 years, and one simply states the sun has been eaten. Some of their folklore goes back to the idea of a dragon coming up and eating the sun. People then bang on drums. Drums solve everything. Banging on drums, making loud noises to scare away the dragon. And of course, it worked. So that became the custom, the go-to. If the sun gets eaten, make noise, scare away whatever entity, whatever creature is eating the sun. Were these beliefs real? Or was it just a customary thing to do, a tradition, coming up with some way to explain what we're seeing and coming up with a fun story to associate with it? I'm curious about that myself. I don't have an answer, but it would seem to make sense to me that, they didn't really believe that a dragon was up there eating the sun. Maybe they did. I don't know. In ancient Hindu mythology, within the Indian culture, this involved a demon that wanted to basically sap the sun of its energy, of its magic, of its immortality by consuming it. Fortunately, Vishnu comes along and decapitates the demon. And what we see, not the moon going in front of the sun, it's actually the demon's severed head flying in front of the sun, causing the eclipse, which, as far as some of the theories go, there's an accuracy there that there's something that's coming across and blocking out the sun. So they were onto something. The Inca of South America, they worshiped a sun god, and they thought that the eclipse showed that the sun god was not happy. So it was at that point that they took stock of what was going on within their society that they needed to change. So that's an interesting thing, because it was used as an opportunity to check in on themselves, to reflect, if you will. Sacrifices would be offered. They didn't always stay in the healthiest space there, but fortunately, the Inca rarely practiced human sacrifice. It's not a zero, but it's rare. So I guess we'll give them partial credit there. Native American, Choctaw legend, mischievous black squirrel gnawing on the sun, which, as a homeowner, I get hatred towards squirrels, and I guess just leave that at that. Of course, as I mentioned, it's West Africa, Togo, Benin, where they believed it was human anger and fighting that spread to the sun and moon. And the Egyptians, very interestingly, don't have any explicit records about solar eclipses. We know that they had Ra, the sun god. And so there's an interesting theory here, which was that perhaps it was so distressing that they were left unrecorded to not endow the event with a degree of permanence. So like, solar eclipses are so scary, let's not bring it up again. And you get that with some sorts of demonic beliefs as well, that the name of a demon, saying it could give it more power. So maybe it was a similar kind of thought there, that just acknowledging the sun going away even more brings more importance to that moment, and we want to minimize that as much as possible. Oh, and I almost forgot, I wanted to show this. Again, there were just so many different ways that this was a unique and special event. And a big part of it was the fact that so many people, this went through so many major cities. So many people were able to easily observe this. One of the places it went over was Cleveland. And here is some video from Cleveland of nightfall coming in and going. And so it's so neat to see the ground looking up here, because this is just straight up the night sky with a defined edge. Look at that coming in, suddenly nighttime. And it was so difficult to try to get good video or photos of it that I really didn't want to be bogged down the rabbit hole. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention stars coming out, planets more so. You saw, I think it was Venus and Jupiter were very prominent in the sky. The fact that you didn't see them at all until suddenly when it was dark. But yeah, just that defined edge of night in the middle of the sky. So unique. As always, I take a look at a comment on a recent video, and I wanted to mention this one as somebody I asked a question in the video. The place next to Franklin's Castle has a garden and Stations of the Cross, Herman's House of Hospitality, which also has a chapel in it. So this is the Franklin Castle, one of the most haunted places in downtown Cleveland, very close to downtown Cleveland. Beautiful old houses you can see here. It was featured in a Ghost Adventures episode. I want to say an earlier on episode. I could be off on that. Later housed a recording studio. I wish I was in there back when people were making music in a haunted location. Very cool. There were kind of darker secret societies that met in there too, which sounds urban legendy, but is actually for real. And people renovating the house, they ended up finding bones hidden, walled away in one of the closets, which certainly that could have led to some of the hauntings. Wanted to mention this because I'm heading back to Cleveland this summer. So if anybody has other locations that I should check out, Haunted Cleveland, I am all for it. I would be completely up for revisiting some of the places that I cover in this video. I had a blast going around the city of Cleveland for the first time in my life, visiting a bunch of different haunted places. Next time I'm out there, I'm very happy to take your suggestions of where I should go next. And finally, as we always like to do, we are going to create our thumbnail, and sticking with the eclipse theme, of course, I figured the first one I'll try is a demon crawling out from behind a solar eclipse. People have so many fears associated, even today, unfortunately, stupidly, I'll be honest, stupidly. Wow. Okay. With solar eclipses, I wanted to play into that a little bit. I mean, this is dark. I said crawling out from behind the solar eclipse, and these are certainly entities that are in front of, although that's pretty cool. I might go with that. But sticking with the Hindu legend where Vishnu saves us, demon's head blocking out the sun and causing a solar eclipse. Let's see what we can get here. I did try first a severed head, and it wouldn't even let me search. Okay, these are, boy, what metal band wouldn't love this? It's their logo. I mean, that's pretty wicked. I don't think I want to go that dark. Even though I'm literally looking for demons' heads. Interesting things here. I mean, how occult can this one be? Okay, I think I'm gonna go back to this bad boy over here. I love this one. Yeah, I think this one's the winner for today. Very, very cool image. Like I said, this is all about sharing stories. My website has existed since 1999 to share ghost stories or share historical research, information that people might be looking for. So many of us went through and saw the path of totality, or even if you didn't and you just observed the eclipse from wherever you were, even if you weren't directly in the path, I think it was 99% of Americans could see at least some fraction of the eclipse. Please leave a comment about what that day was like for you. And if you had any profound moments, especially, but really at all, just what you ended up seeing. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
No.
It's not